When we put together lists of great radio presenters, our next guest on stage is absolutely on that list. In his career so far, he's brought us everything from outrageous moments to heartwarming moments to moments that make you cry. He's the host of the most listened to breakfast show in the UK on BBC Radio 2, and before that he spent 24 years at BBC Radio 1 as well. And along the way he's kept listeners laughing and crying and everything in between. So whether you're here today to uncover the secrets of benchmarks or just want a bit of behind-the-scenes gossip, this is absolutely the session for you. Please welcome on stage Mr. Scott Mills.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. It's big in here, isn't it?
It is big in here, yeah.
Ooh.
Okay. Wow, what are we going to talk about? You, mainly.
Ask me some questions.
Okay, listen, let's kick off with a bit of history for people who don't know you, talk a little bit about your career as well. I did, with my great PowerPoint skills, a handy timeline. So this is the timeline. I don't know if you can see that, or the monitor's a mile away. This is a timeline of you and the stations, and we go from the very young Scott with the soft focus through to the current day Radio 2 Scott.
All of my hairstyles.
There you go, all the hairstyles. Yeah. You started very young, 16 years old, commercial radio. What did you learn from your years working in commercial radio?
I absolutely loved working in commercial radio. I mean, if it had gone no further than that, I would have been more than happy because I was doing the job that I wanted to do since I was 7, 8 years old. That's how long I wanted to do the radio from then. So, I mean, I sent a lot of demos. Later on, I sent a lot of demos to Radio 1 while I was at commercial radio. Pretty much came to nothing. And then I thought, I'll send one last one. And this is over a period of about 5 or 6 years. And they're like, it's not quite right, it's not quite right. And then Lorna Clark, who was editor of Radio 1 at the time, gave me a call. But if that hadn't have happened, I was absolutely content. And what I would say I learned from commercial radio has been invaluable to me at the BBC. And I think it's the art of playing music well, or the skill of that, proper jockeying, making things sound exciting. And I think I have commercial radio to thank for that. The flow.
Keep it tight and bright.
Keep tight and bright. The slickness that you get, how to get the best out of the imaging and the jingles. I learned all of that in commercial radio, and I had a great time.
Here's you at BBC Radio 1. You were there for 24 years?
Yeah.
That's a long time to be at any one radio station, which is great. What was the secret to staying at BBC Radio 1 for 24 years, Scott?
Botox. No, I was thinking this the other day. When I joined, by the way, still love, but I absolutely adored being at Radio 1 because as a kid, it was a place that it's a bit like when you say, I want to be a spaceman. It's never going to happen to you. Yeah. So your parents go, have you considered carpentry? Being on Radio 1 just doesn't happen. So when it did, I mean, I loved every single moment of it. So I joined when pop became kind of cool again. So it would have been end of '98. So it was the time when Britney Spears was coming out and Christina Aguilera. And at the time, I believe that I was brought in because they kind of needed a lover of pop on the network, which they didn't really have. They didn't have a young pop music fan. Everyone wanted to play guitars.
And you love your pop music.
I love my pop music unashamedly, which at the time at Radio 1 was like, ugh, he likes pop. But as you know, on a new music station, music genres come in and out of fashion. Yeah. So I think somehow I managed to ride the wave of, well, pop at first, then UK garage, then some pop again, then really indie again. Then there was a strange folk period, and then grime, Nick.
Grime.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
look like you're into grime.
Yeah, yeah.
So staying in touch with the music of the time and kind of knowing what's going on, actually,
Yeah.
it's a serious point, quite important.
It is really important, but I sponge all that up. I
Yeah.
love it. I'm interested in it.
And you love popular culture
I
as
do,
well. Yeah.
and I
okay.
make sure, even like now, I want to know what's going on because
Yeah.
I've done it for so long. But I think as long as you keep on top of what young people are listening to and what they're talking about, and doing a show that appeals to that audience, and talking about what they're talking about,
Yeah.
then I think well, it seemed to be all right.
Well, it clearly works because you were
Yeah.
there for a long time. Here's you in the Radio 2 studio. When the move came, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but when the move came, you were ready, it was the right time? Because no one likes to leave a radio station that's been your dream forever, but eventually the time comes.
I mean, I had a good innings, right?
You did.
But it was time. I remember I was doing the Radio 1 chart show one day, and I had to introduce someone called HS Tiki Toki, and I just thought, do you know what, I probably should go now. I don't know who
HS
that
Tiki
is.
Toki.
Yeah, you know, HS Tiki
Of
Toki.
course, I love the second album.
But, however, I truly believe that I found the real me on Radio 1. I don't think I found it in commercial radio at all. Because if you remember, and you were on air at this time as well, personality kind of wasn't required or really wanted.
It was like, keep your personality down a little bit, play the hits.
Yeah, play the hits, tell me the time, talk up to the vocal, and that's all we need.
And you were more than that.
Well,
Well, it brings us on nicely to this grand title, Philosophy and Style. Do you have a philosophy of radio, and what's your style? How would you describe what you do? Because you're in a kind of interesting zone between personality, but also, as you said earlier, you can jock it.
Yeah.
So is that your style, your philosophy?
Well, I would say that when I arrived at Radio 1, it was terrifying because they go, right, what do you want to do in the show? And you're like, well, what do you mean? Like, it's basically a blank A4 piece of paper, and they're like, what should we do? And you don't really know what to say. And I just want to quickly credit the wonderful Ben Cooper, who called me, I remember, who was my boss at the time. He called me after a show one day. I was doing early breakfast at the time, but I was also filling in for Jamie Theakston on Saturday morning on Radio 1. And he pointed out some bits to me, and he said, let's have more of that. More of that. But it's like having, and some people never achieve it. Some of the best DJs I know never achieve it, but it's having that confidence to put your life on air, which is a big step. But so it was Ben, actually, who really pushed me with that. So thanks, Ben, for giving me a personality.
And he's probably here in the audience somewhere as well. He encouraged your personality to come out, really, which was really good. You know?
Philosophy-wise, I would say that in a way, my style is actually quite old school. And I think it draws from my UK radio heroes that I used to love. Steve Wright, Simon Mayo, Neil Fox on Capital, Pat Sharp, who at the time was the slickest jock in the game. I wanted it to have all that slick, but I also want you to know that it is me you're listening to. And if you can do the slick and the personality, and the listener can get to know you, then I honestly think that's the winning combo.
Do you do a lot of prep? And the reason
No.
He's prepped the session, everybody. There's a professional. You're conscientious, right? You pay attention.
I prep for every show. And now on Radio 2 Breakfast, I mean, I've got a bigger team than I have ever worked with before, and they are world class. But you will still find me beavering away in my notebook because I always have something in the back pocket. For instance, timeless content that you could do any day. ready for that day when you don't really have anything to say about your own life, which happens, and nothing particularly exciting is happening in the world of entertainment or showbiz, or nothing particularly interesting happened that day apart from the depressing news. So I always try and have one or two things in my back pocket that I can deploy if I need to. We actually have an email inbox for my show, and we did this at Radio 1 too. And any of the team, whoever it is at the time, when they have an idea, you can just fire it into the inbox. And as a result, there's thousands.
Better to be looking at it than looking for it. I think is
And I don't want, I'm not very good at that. I actually don't want the on-air panic of that, of like, what's next?
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about creativity, because you've done loads of creative stuff on your show. We'll play one in a minute, which I really like. Do you kind of actively seek that out? Is your radar always on, looking at other shows, looking at what's happening on TV, online, all that kind of stuff? Or?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's essential, actually. We play a lot of clips from, not just BBC ones, we play interesting clips or funny clips from other podcasts.
Okay.
Because obviously they appear in my timeline. Well, that would be good for the show. And then that can spark a different conversation, or that starts it off.
Well, you see a bit of social media, and you kind of go, there's a singing man there.
That's a fun bit.
Yeah.
And fun TV bits, obviously, and social. But I think you can bring clips to life by the way you talk around them. Sometimes your lead into a clip, the setup, is what makes the clip funnier. If you're scrolling on your phone, it's funny because you can see it.
Yeah.
But more often than not, if you can do a good setup of something, then it's so much better than if you just played it.
Any ideas that have totally bombed that you tried on the radio when we're not doing that again?
Got a list?
Okay.
Yes. Which one shall I do?
Which one can you mention?
Okay. See, very lucky at the BBC, both at 1 and 2. You are, I think Helen touched on this yesterday, you're encouraged to try things.
Yep.
Because you can get rid of it, and the listeners won't really notice. So try it. There was one I did at Radio 2. On paper, fine. The idea being, some people have never eaten. There are some people in life that have never touched things that we've all eaten. Cheese, tomato, pizza. So I thought, that's quite a fun idea. So this guy comes on, he was trying a pizza for the very first time in his life at the age of 45. Okay. Now I was expecting absolute disgust. And he just chewed it a bit and went, oh, it's quite nice, actually. I don't know why I didn't try it before. So
that wasn't the greatest reaction.
I didn't do that again.
Yeah.
Then, there was, I don't know if Jackie's still here, there was an amazing book in Australia called Confessions of an Uber Driver.
Right.
And I remember they used to talk to him on Kyle and Jackie O, which is a great show. And I thought, okay, that's quite fun for a UK version. If we can find a character taxi driver, he can tell us all sorts. But British callers are not the same as Australian callers. So we tried it, I think, and he was a guy from Birmingham, and all he had was, a girl was sick once, and I had to clear it up, and that was it. And it was in no way believe me, the Australia one had a lot of detail.
There are more creative features you don't. I want to play you the setup of one. I'll play you a little clip of it as well. This was called Sack of Shame.
Oh,
Sack of Shame. Can you remember what Sack of Shame was?
I think it was a rucksack.
Yes.
And was it like a Siri type thing?
This is 10, 11 years ago, before, just as those voices were coming in. Let's have a look at the setup for Sack of Shame.
Okay, so we're on the 6th floor of the BBC, and we're about to play a game where Chris can control anything that comes out of this speaker, which is in my bag. There's a big speaker in there, worked by Bluetooth. He types it in, and the voice will say it. So I'm going to go in the lift, and basically I'm at his mercy. So whatever happens, whatever the voice says, I just have to kind of deal with it. And I don't know who's going to get into the lift, what kind of people, and I don't know, obviously, what you're going to type in.
My name is Scott Mills. I'm a celebrity. I earn a lot more money than you. Work harder, you lazy pupils.
See what I mean? It's amazing.
Literally the worst thing ever. Oh my God.
8th floor. Doors opening.
The rest of it you can watch on YouTube because it's great, but it's very, very funny.
Awful.
That's good, but you liked kind of embarrassing yourself. There was no...
Yeah, the thing is, I am always up to be the fall guy. And I quite like self-deprecation.
Yeah. It kind of became a bit of a floating benchmark. We've talked about benchmarks
Yeah,
before.
we didn't actually do it that often.
Yeah.
We should have done it more.
Yeah, yeah, it was a good one. The benchmark stuff that you've had, some of these is kind of more regular, or you'll do stuff for a few weeks and it becomes a little story arc, and we'll get into story arcs in a minute. Your most famous kind of benchmark, which would pop up occasionally, was Innuendo Bingo. How did you persuade Hollywood stars and celebrities to have Chris Stark spit water into their face?
Well, I mean, when you watch this feature now, you're like, since COVID, you're like, that's horrible. But it was devised in a pub in North London by me and a brilliant genius producer, Emlyn Dodd, who, out of all my Radio 1 time, I worked with the most. And once again, I would credit Emlyn for, he could just write in my style, and we had the same humor, and he just got me.
Okay.
He was the best. So there was one day on the show, we found a bit of innuendo from a TV show, and for some reason, I can't remember why, Emlyn said to Laura, who was working on the show at the time, try and get through this clip and put some water in your mouth.
And innuendo, if you don't know the word, innuendo is something that is not meant to be rude, but sounds very rude.
Could be rude, but isn't.
Yes.
Rude, but sounds rude.
Yeah.
So he was like, fill your water in your mouth and let's see what happens. Obviously, the water sprayed everywhere. Now, this develops into a feature that lasted 15 years. Two people, often celebrities, sat opposite each other, and we play the funny clips, and then obviously the water will spray. I'll tell you what, so we managed to get quite a lot of reality contestants to do it.
From reality TV
but
shows.
The breakthrough was, at the time, Gerard Butler was a big fan of our show, and he used to listen to it in New York. And he had a film coming out, and he actually, somehow, we spoke to the PR, and this is it. The PR emailed and said, Gerard loves Innuendo Bingo, can he play it? And we were like, can Gerard Butler play Innuendo Bingo? Yes.
Yeah.
And then that opened the floodgates.
Okay, because if Gerard Butler can do it...
Because then, to the next person, to the next PR, you can show, well, we've got Gerard Butler to do it, and he's a Hollywood star. And then, I mean, and it really, that changed the game. If you watch one, go on YouTube and watch the one with Kylie Minogue and Hugh Jackman.
Okay. Say no more. Let's talk a bit about story arcs. Are they important to you to get that kind of sense of, I'm coming back to find out what happened? It might be you doing a personal reveal and a story arc to do with your life, or a story arc with a character on the show, or a listener as a character. So talk to me about that a little bit.
I like to do a lot of weekly ones to drag people through the week.
Okay.
And we're trying that out right now on Radio 2.
Yep.
For now, because we're only 5 weeks in a smaller way. Sometimes they can be longer form, obviously, and they can be bigger. You can supersize them. But the weekly ones that we've done, last week we did a thing where I said that I wasn't going to set my alarm for the show, and I encourage listeners to do the same, because I was like, I've cracked this early morning thing now. I don't need an alarm. So I didn't set an alarm for 4 a.m.
You raw dogged it.
I did raw dog it, because I just found that I was waking up before the alarm.
Okay.
That actually happened.
And then you encourage listeners not to do it.
And then, obviously, the next day, you've got listeners going, oh, my God, it works. I can do this every day now. So encouraging the listeners to try that. The team, I did try and get them to do it. They didn't want to do it. Or Ellie from the show, who has been struggling to find a place to live in London, to rent. And she was looking for ages. Finding a flat in London is hard and expensive. But so she finally finds a place that she likes, but it comes with a cat called Roger. So we hear every day about how their relationship is developing. Does Roger dislike her? What's she doing to get on his good side? And the listeners really, we do this quite early doors. This is like 6:30 till 7, before the world is probably waking up. But that time of day, I find that the listeners really buy in, and you'll be getting a text the next day going, "Where's the Roger update?"
Yeah. This is like hooking into that stuff. So can I just mention a couple of the ones that I remember from your Radio 1 show? So the Scott Mills Bridge. There is a bridge named after you over a motorway linking two motorway service stations on the M3.
It's glamorous.
I don't know if you want to explain how that came along, but that was a story arc.
Okay, I'll do it quickly. It was an idea from Chris, my brilliant co-host, at the time on Radio 1, tongue-in-cheek. He said that there's always a bit of a joke on Radio 1, like, oh, you're a bit too old to be here. So Chris said that there should be a monument or statue or something to remember me when I'm no longer here. So Fleet Services on the M3 reached out and offered the bridge that connects the south and northbound carriageways. So one side has got like the toilets and the shops, and the other side has like Starbucks, Subway, blah, blah. And we thought it was great because the bridge, I mean, that picture makes it look better than it is. The bridge is way past its best. But then on air, we supersized it. They put up a plaque, which is still there. So we got curtains and did a proper unveiling with the local mayor. And it's still there. And still, I mean, most days I get a message on it, so I'm going, just been on your bridge, needs a lick of paint.
Yeah. The great thing about it, if you go onto TripAdvisor, there is actually a TripAdvisor review for the Scott Mills Bridge. And out of 10 things to do in Fleet, it rates as number 3. So if you're ever going to Fleet Services, stop at the Scott Mills Bridge and remember the man himself.
That's a classic example, though, of how you can make it bigger. Also, if you go on Google Maps, it's on there.
It's on the map. Okay. Scott Mills, the musical.
Oh, yeah.
Give me 30 seconds on this. You staged a musical in the Edinburgh Festival, which is a big arts festival in Scotland.
So this is years ago. Radio 1 decided that we should do some shows from the Edinburgh Festival. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's amazing. Like, every type of show for every type of person. It's incredible. Comedy, arts, everything. So the thing was, I can't bear musicals, especially at the time. So obviously this is tongue-in-cheek, because why the hell would there be a musical about me? So Emlyn, this is Emlyn again, we're like, well, let's do, you don't like musicals. There's never going to be a musical about you, so let's do Scott Mills a musical. So we did 3 nights at the Fringe in the Pleasance Theatre. Sell out. I mean, the tickets were free. But we auditioned for somebody to play young Scott Mills.
Okay.
And so it's deeper than that, but that was the idea, and it was lots of fun.
There you go. Guests and interviews. Now, you have done a fair range of guests and interviews over the years. There's a few selections of famous faces that you've spoken to. How do you make your guest interviews sound a bit different? Because when I listen to them, I think, oh, you just treat any superstar as like the bloke from the pub. You know, there's a very kind of just neutral way of doing it. You don't really celebrate their stardom or, bow down before them. Do you know what I mean?
I want the listeners, so we get a lot of listeners. Actually, we find that TikTok is quite a good way of finding kind of star listeners. There's a lady that we have on called Hev at the moment, who works at Primark in Blue Water.
Right.
And she's just really funny. But I will treat Janet Jackson the same way as Hev. They're all the stars of the show. Okay. So yeah, no one is on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And also I'm lucky at Radio 2 in particular because I already would know them from when I interviewed them on Radio 1 15 or 20 years ago. Yeah. And I always try and make it sound like it, even if I don't know them that well, like it's two people just catching up. But the key is to listen to the answer that they give. And I listened to early interviews that I used to do, and I just wasn't listening. They could have just given you a tiny morsel of info, which is gold. Investigate more. But then if you're nervous, which you used to be, they'll tell you something like, Stevie Wonder is my cousin. I'm like, what first got you into the world of music? It's like, oh, you just ignored that.
Yeah.
Because you're on to the next question.
And that informality is something that I really like. And here's a clip for you. This is a very informal chat, perhaps with more formal people.
Now, William, someone from around here told me that you're a bit nervous about being on Radio 1 today.
I don't know what you're talking about, Scott. What are you talking about? This is a face of calm.
Is it true that you listen? And
occasionally, yeah.
Is it true that you text in?
I have texted in, yeah.
Under
I've
a different name?
Obviously, I wouldn't tell you who I was, definitely not. But I've texted in on Adele's show most recently, because when I've been driving to work and for the air ambulance shift. She's the only one who's brave enough to be up at that time of morning.
What are you doing texting in your car?
Obviously, I've stopped in a lay-by and have not texted whilst driving, because that is illegal.
So I don't obviously need to know what the name is, but did you get a shout-out?
Well, I got a shout-out, yes, from Adele on the day. I also got a shout-out ages ago from Sarah Cox. She gave me another one.
Right, see, I don't think it matters who you are. A shout-out on Radio 1 is still great, right? Did you feel like, oh?
I felt very, very, very privileged, yeah. Very honoured.
I think basically we can now say that BBC Radio 1 is the official station of the Royal Family.
Scott.
I'm probably at the edge of your age limit. I'm probably meant to go across to Radio 2 now, but I'm hanging on in there.
No, it's fine. Come on in.
I mean, they must have come across by now, right?
Yeah. Is he texting into your Radio 2 show now?
I don't know, Nick.
Yeah, under his false name.
He's not going to put Will, is he?
Yeah, HRH.
Yeah.
When a guest isn't giving you much, how do you turn it around? Are you throwing a few jokes, or you lighten the mood or something? Or
Are you going to play what I think?
I am going to play what you think I'm going to play. Shall I set it up now? Or?
No, can I set it up?
Okay.
It's all in the setup, as I told you.
Yeah.
So this is my first week of doing breakfast on Radio 2. And this was not a great interview. And if I'm honest, I was dreading it. So the week before, we were doing some real-time pilots, so we were getting up and doing the show early, and they were like, hey, one of the first guests is Harrison Ford. And I went, oh, cool.
Han Solo on the show.
Right, it's amazing. But after the interview, I left the building I'm my own worst critic, so I was kind of kicking myself, and I was actually quite crestfallen, because it's the first week, and I went home on the tube, and I was like, oh. My advice would be lean into it. This was a pre-recorded interview, and he's a legend, and also he's an old man, so do not be mean. But on air beforehand, I think how we dealt with it was, I'm not saying it's live, I'm not saying it's pre-recorded. I think I said something like, Hollywood megastar Harrison Ford is on the show in the next 10 minutes. You know what Harrison's like. One day he could be a chatty Cathy, and the next day he'll give you nothing. Let's see which one we get today. And then we got the latter. But also, have a look, but this is where social media is vital. Because if you watch the clip, what they've left in my really awkward and awful pre-chat with him, where I'm trying to warm him up, and I'm saying things like, you got your coffee there? You all right, Harrison? And he's like, what? But obviously, you didn't hear that on the air because it was edited out. So, I mean, yeah, I'm trying my hardest to warm him up.
Shall we watch the bit?
If we must.
We must.
Are you ready? Have a little coffee first, if you want. Are you ready? You good?
Am I ready?
Yeah.
Born ready.
Born ready. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Harrison. Good morning, Harrison Ford. How are you?
As well as could be expected.
Just taking your first sip of the morning coffee there?
Yes.
Yes.
I've had a few cups already.
What's your drink of choice? It looks black to me.
It is black.
Americano?
I would have preferred a brewed coffee, but that's what you get.
That's what you get here,
And you don't get upset.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Is it just you get what you're given and you're happy with it?
Well, not always happy with it, but you get
It'll
what you
do.
get.
Yeah, I
you
get
get
it.
what you deserve.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Week one.
Yeah, but also week 1, I think, as well, or week 2. Elton.
Week 2, yes.
Week 2.
Yes.
Elton was great. He made up for it.
Really good. The thing is with Harrison, yeah, I mean, he didn't give much. But as I said, lean into it because that has now got 4.1 million views on Instagram.
There you go. Every cloud has a
Hooray.
silver lining.
At the time, I was, yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about listeners and interaction. You, particularly on the breakfast show, and we're going to come to that in a minute. You mention listeners a lot. Listeners are a really important part. It's like you're doing it for them and you're acknowledging them like all the time. But when I listen to that, I think, yeah, that sounds great. It feels like a show for the listeners. That's strategic from you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I do it a bit on autopilot. And it's only when I listen back, I'm like, oh, you're mentioning a lot of listeners there. What is different, I hope, and I think, is that they're all bringing something to the narrative of the show. To me, when I hear a show that is just full of, I mean, I know people love a shout out, but if it's a show that's just music and some shout outs, hello to Simon in Plymouth and Sarah in Brighton. The only people that are getting anything out of that are Simon and Sarah because, yeah, they just got a shout out. You're not getting anything out of that. So you've just got to give a bit more. So it can be them reacting to something that you've just talked about on the show. It can be that they're having a bad day, that they're nervous about their driving test or their job interview that they've got coming up. And then you've got, and always say where they're from. So then you've got a name, you've got a place name, you've got their name, a place name in the UK, but also you're getting a little snapshot of what's happening around the UK that you're not getting if you're just reading out their name, which to me feels a little lazy.
When you were on afternoons on Radio 2, before you took over breakfast, you were on afternoons. You did this nice thing, which I'm going to play you a clip of now, where the listeners were incorporated into the start of the show. In fact, a listener started the show. Here's how that sounded.
Thank you, Harvey. Good afternoon to you. Hope Monday's been all right so far. Let's get you through the rest of it.
Scott Mills, Radio 2.
Hi Scott, I'm Laura from Paddockwood in Kent. I am still smiling so much and dancing around after you playing Islands in a Stream by Nessa and Bryn from Gavin and Stacey on Friday. Thank you so much for making my day.
Yeah, that was a moment. See, you never know what's going to come up on the birthday game. And that's on soon.
So everyone, it is Monday, it's 2 o'clock and it's time for Scott Mills on Radio 2.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go. It's nice having a listener at the top of that because it just kind of felt really engaging and every day you'd have a different listener on, which I thought was really, really nice.
I mean, right out of the news, you've already got a listener on. And once again, reacting to something that's been on the show.
The other thing that illustrates, and we've got another clip to illustrate it as well, is flow. We talked about this a little bit earlier. This is something I think that you do probably better than most, if I can spare your blushes for a moment.
Thank you.
It's really, really good, the flow on your show. It feels like it's got forward progression, there's pace, you're using intros, you're using outro beds.
This is where the commercial radio comes in handy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this section is a bit geeky, but I'm so... I stress this so much with radio stations, how it can make an average show into a good show just by constructing it really well. That's something you think about, or is it just natural?
I do think about it, especially on breakfast. Obviously, there are more talk breaks, so I do. It's very easy to come out of the 8 o'clock news and autopilot. Thank you very much. Blah blah blah. Jingle jingle. I'm here all the way through to Vernon Kay, blah, blah, blah. Coming up, we've got music from blah, 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 blah. Like, you can do that, but I generally would try and give you something more to hang on to and to hopefully keep listening.
I've got a clip I'm going to play. This is, again, you'd started breakfast, so this is a couple of weeks ago, and you were talking about the link between breakfast and drive. The drive time host is Sarah Cox. and she'd had listeners trying to come up with some sort of slogan or phrase to link the shows. So that's a nice little bit anyway, but the flow on this is great because you got clips, you got jingles, you got listeners, you got a song. It's all in there in about 60 seconds. Let's go.
That's the BBC News at coming up to 7:05.
Tina, thank you. Halfway through the week. Sarah Cox is trying to come up with the ultimate slogan to unite our two shows on Radio 2. Apparently, Rise with Mills, Shine with Cox was good, but it wasn't right. But so many of you came up with new ones for Sarah on her show last night. Jill in Hull.
With Mills's Rise and Shine, with Sarah, Drive and Dine.
Good. Thanks, Jill. You won't hear from us for a while, but we'll put it to the BBC board. And if successful, we'll be back in touch with you. Michael in the Rhondda Valley.
Rise with Mills, shine with Cox. Loosen your hips on your radio box.
Right. I mean, there'll always be someone that can do better. Get in touch. Oh, it's Good Morning Minute already. Text me or WhatsApp me. I need to know who you are, where you are, and one specific detail about your morning. Text or WhatsApp. Wait.
BBC Radio 2.
Wait. Go. Text 88291. WhatsApp 08000 288 291. Who are you? Where are you? One detail.
I know when to go out.
Nailed that vocal on the David Bowie track.
Thanks, commercial radio.
Yeah, it's just great flow. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, come on. You see?
It actually, obviously it's important to try and unite your breakfast and drive shows.
Yes.
For car listening. And we, while Ben was at Radio 1, we came up with, if you remember, Wake Up with Moyles, Go Home with Mills. So yeah, it's basically that
But
again.
you've not quite got the phrase yet.
Not quite yet.
No. Okay.
But I do think it's important with that. And as Helen was, I don't know if you were here for Helen Thomas's bit yesterday, but both when I joined Radio 1 and not when I joined Radio 2, but back in the day, all the shows used to be islands. And if you listened to Radio 1, like in that era of Moyles, Mills, we were all chatting about each other, we were all mates, and I think it's so important. And we also now have that at Radio 2, where it does, and it is genuinely, I would say that, but it is, and it genuinely feels like a family. And we're all talking about each other's shows, and I think that's so important.
We're going to finish by bringing it bang up to date, and you're on the breakfast show for how many weeks now has it been? 6 weeks?
So
7 weeks?
I've got a day off tomorrow. I'm already getting comments about that. More days off than Santa already. So I've taken the one day off today, back on tomorrow.
Okay.
We're going into week 6.
Week 6. Okay. Let's hear, because we always like to focus on what's he going to say first? How's he going to start the show? So I'm going to play your opening link for your opening break when you started the Radio 2 breakfast show.
Oh God, okay.
Okay. Let's have a listen to this.
Here we go then, Monday the 27th of January 2025, and this is the Scott Mills Breakfast Show on BBC Radio 2, and I can't believe I'm finally saying those words. As a radio presenter and a radio fan all my life, I'm still finding it quite hard to process that this is happening, if I'm honest. If I think too much about the previous occupiers of this show, it becomes mind-blowing to me. For a kid who wanted to be on the radio but wasn't sure he had the self-confidence to be able to actually do it. The aim here is to make you smile, to bring up your mood, to make you shoulder and head dance in bed or in the shower or in the car or in the kitchen, and to keep your spirits up on mornings when maybe you don't feel so great. And I want you to reach out and be part of this show anytime you want to, anytime you feel like it. It's your voice, your stories, and your life that's going to make this show into something that I really hope you come to adore and look forward to every day. That's my aim. I want you to be listening every morning, and for this to be your go-to place where you know that Radio 2 is the one that is guaranteed to lift you up, to hear something funny or interesting or an artist that you love or a piece of music that means so much to you. I've worked at the BBC for 25 years now on the radio. A lot of you may well have grown up listening to me. I'm sure a lot of you will not have much idea about me at all. Either way, if you could make me part of your morning routine, it would honestly mean so much, because believe me, I'm going to give it absolutely everything I've got. I really hope you enjoy it. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, that's great. And you're on the show. It's a great listen. I was delighted when they announced that you were going to take it over, because I can't think of a better radio person to host the biggest breakfast show in the UK. Sadly, we're out of time. I've got one couple more quick questions then. Best advice you've ever been given? Best advice?
Always talk to one person.
Mm-hmm.
You do hear a lot of, hey, gang. Normally, people are mostly listening on their own. Don't ever think that you are bigger than the radio station you're on, because you can and normally will be replaced. And I think we touched on it before. Treat everyone the same. Even if it's Leonardo DiCaprio or Jenny from Leeds, everyone's on the same level.
Okay. Golden rule? Any golden rules in your life, career, radio stations?
Be generous as a presenter. Listen to others if they're on the show. Let them speak. You're the conductor of the orchestra, if you like. Yours is not always the most important voice.
Okay. You've been very generous with your time, and thank you for taking a day off your new show to be
thank
here
you for
at
having
Radio
me. I've
Days.
loved it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Mills.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Scott. Brilliant. Really enjoyed that. Absolutely amazing. I actually worked at Fleet Services. That was my first student job. Didn't know about the bridge, though.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a long time ago.
You must visit.
Yeah, I must. Next time I go, I'll wave at it. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Right, in here, in a few moments' time, top 10 promotions ever. And that'll be our last session before lunch.